What do people not realize has an extremely low chance of happening? Story 1. Actually coming out ahead in gambling if you do it often enough. Of course, anyone with a decent brain knows that typical gambling is negative value every time, but if you do it often enough, it's even less likely that you'll come out ahead. As the number of events being looked at approaches infinity, the outcome will approach the mean, which is negative value. That's one reason why if you put on a cheeky bet and end up winning, just quit while you're ahead. Or don't bet in the first place. It's fine if you can consider it an entertainment expense, but all too many people try to use that as a justification, when the truth is that they're really hoping to buck the odds, and the maths doesn't care about how much you wish it would bend to you. Story 2. Finding your soulmate. Imagine every person is a puzzle piece. There are 8 billion pieces. Do you think the 3-4 pieces you fit in perfectly with are going to be in your immediate area? Find one that's close and make it work. There are plenty of remarkable pieces that fit pretty well even if they're not the one, and you might even make a neat picture in your tiny part PF the world. Story 3. I guess a lot of young dudes will hate me for that, but I'm truly sure that nowadays it is a chance of becoming a famous rapper starting from zero. It's possible if you already have money and professional production behind you, but it's impossible to become a star from your parents' bedroom. Sorry. Story 4. I feel like a number of things mentioned here as low risk, low probability are actually high risk and only low probability exactly because we are so afraid of them that we take every precaution, like child kidnapping by a stranger or even shark attack to some degree. Truly, only few risks are not affected, minimally affected by our behavior. Plane crash being one. Everything else you have to consider the fear-risk feedback loop before you start acting like it can't happen to you. Story 5. Aliens existing within our realm of existence. We're never going to see them. They're never going to see us. There will be no method of travel that will bring us together. While they may exist, the idea of us interacting with them is pure science fiction. Story 6. Anyone giving a single flying fuck about hacking you or your data. Unless you are a well-known troublemaker from an autocracy with serious resources, your medical data and old Facebook pictures is of no consequence to anybody. Relax, and certainly don't halt the many benefits things like centralized records provide. Story 7. World depopulation down to 10% or less. I was hearing about this plan 30 years ago, and the theory is still very much alive today. If the people with power wanted to depopulate the world, they wouldn't need 30 or more years to accomplish a goal that was achievable in days or even hours. Story 8. When galaxies collide out in the universe, there's almost a 0 chance that any stars in each of the respective galaxies with hit each other. What is crazy is that the average amount of stars in any galaxy is 100 billion. There is just so much space between stars that the odds are almost 0 in a galactic collision. Story 9. If you are in the developed world getting rabies. People love to talk about how horrifying rabies is, and as soon as you have symptoms, it's too late. But we have eradicated it to the point of rabies being an incredibly rare disease. There are only 3 cases of people getting rabies in the U.S. per year. You have a higher chance of winning over $100 million in the lottery. Story 10. Being awake under anesthesia. People worry about it often thanks to Hollywood or a story someone told them. The reality is that true awareness under anesthesia is close to 1 in a million, and most anesthesiologists will never see it in their entire career. Real awareness under anesthesia means that you are paralyzed as the surgeon is actively working. It is traumatic and associated with PTSD. People often say that they were awake under anesthesia, but this is usually due to a few things. Poor communication by the anesthesiologist. The patient thought they would be asleep, but they will only get sedation. They remember things prior to surgery, like being in the room, seeing the equipment, and/or having a mask on their face. This is fairly normal. Lastly, sometimes patients say they woke up early. Some practices wake people up in the recovery area, but it's also common for patients to be woken up in the room. Sometimes this occurs as a dressing is being applied. Again, this is normal. It is really rare to have true awareness under general anesthesia. Good communication preoperatively helps patients to know what to expect during the surgery. Story 11. Winning and gambling. They have some idea, but they truly don't think of the long-term losses. Like my grandma, played $20 on the lotto almost every week religiously for decades. Over her lifespan, she probably dropped about 30 grand, and I doubt even got $100 in return. Whenever I go to the gas station for a caffeine fix, there's always a group of middle-aged folks buying scratchers out the ass, and not the cheap ones. Vegas. If the house don't win, it's going to make sure you still lose. The ponies are known to be fixed. I think humans have some kind of impulse when it comes to a mystery, luck, and chance. Even video games do it now. Cash for loot boxes, and offer nothing besides virtual items for a game. It's nuts. Story 12. I've asked people who played the lottery if they would ever play the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They all say no way. But the odds of the winner being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are exactly the same as any other 5-digit number combination. The chances of the one you picked being right are absurdly low. Story 13. Just about everything people are afraid of. Sugarcoating life has led to a literal deficit in physical brain development in the risk assessment center of the brain, and studies show that children not exposed to slightly risky tasks, like climbing trees, etc., do worse at risk assessments for the rest of their lives. Story 14, becoming filthy rich. Ever becoming anybody like Elon? All those people the plebs admire as so-called self-made people were not in fact self-made. They all were born with platinum spoons in their mouths, and they were never going to fail no matter what. Bill Gates, born to a rich family. His mom personally knew the CEO of IBM. The rest of us could never get a meeting with the CEO like he could to ink his deal for Microsoft. Mark Zuckerberg, another rich kid like Gates who could afford to drop out of Harvard. Jeff Bezos. You think you could line up the massive amount of venture capital Amazon hemorrhaged for years before they found a reasonable business model? None of these people made it because of their hard work, as much as they did from their blue-blooded contacts and connections, ones that the rest of us will never have. The rare occasion of someone who does pull themselves up is about as likely as getting struck by lightning multiple times. You're better off buying lottery tickets than thinking you're going to be like Larry Ellison. Story 15. Being born. The universe must be formed, and the solar system. Then you have to make sure the Earth is actually formed. Then have the meteors hit it to make water. Then have land emerge, the life. Then life goes on land. Then humans form. Then make sure the bloodline doesn't break, and make sure your parents meet. Then have them not break up and conceive you. Then finally you are born. And if we add those odds, it's a 1 in a 400 trillion. Story 16, a big solo lottery win. Primarily because I'm going to win, and so that knocks everyone else out of a chance of winning for that drawing. Seriously, I'd be thrilled to lose the jackpot and get a $2 million, $10 million alternate prize. The goal isn't to win the jackpot. The goal is to win more than you spend or lose, so slowly you can afford it until you hit a larger prize. But it's not going to happen. Doesn't matter. Winning isn't the true goal. You're purchasing hope. And $2 is a small price to pay for life-changing hope, even if it is astronomically long odds hope. For those 4 days while you wait to lose, there is reason to go on. Story 17. Being bitten by a spider. If you didn't see it bite you, it is probably not a spider bite. Most spider bites, including those diagnosed by doctors, are not really spider bites. People always just assume it is for some reason whenever. Many researchers and scientists who've spent their entire careers working with report never having been bitten by spiders, despite regularly handling them with their hands. This has been my experience too as a hobbyist of a few years. I have had multiple types of pet spiders and am currently raising jumping spiders, and I too have never been bitten. They don't want to bite you. Chill. Story 18. People often don't realize that the chance of there being a bomb on a plane is extremely low. But there is a solution for this flaw. Story time. A man needs to fly, but he is afraid there might be a bomb on the plane. He calculates the probability of a bomb being on board and finds that it is very low. Despite this, he is not entirely reassured, so he decides to bring a bomb himself. His reasoning is that the chance of there being 2 bombs on a plane is extremely small. Story 20. Aliens landing on Earth. It is near certain that some other form of life exists in our universe. It is also near certain that we will never meet. The likelihood that intelligent, sentient extraterrestrials could not only exist within the lifespan of humanity, very short in the grand scheme of things, but also develop interstellar travel within our lifetime and use that technology to come anywhere near us. It's not impossible, but it's very close to zero. Story 21. Winning the lottery. Like, people know it's long odds, but they can't conceive of how vanishingly small the chance is of any particular person winning, including themselves. People will be like, well, somebody had to win. First, no, that's not a guarantee. And second, that somebody will not be you, and I can say that with certainty that is so close to 100% that it might as well be. Buying more than one ticket number also does not meaningfully change your chances. Buying 2 tickets doubles your probability, but 2 times close to 0 is still close to 0. If you want to play the lottery so that you can at least dream of winning it, I get it. In that case, purchase one single randomly chosen, that is, quick pick number. People who pick the same numbers every time are susceptible to FOMO. They worry about what will happen if their numbers are picked the one time they don't play. Don't fall into that trap. All combinations of numbers are also equally likely to come up, even if it sounds counterintuitive. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are just as likely to come up as 12, 18, 22, 29, 36, 43, and 47 or whatever. Just because 7 consecutive numbers have never come up doesn't mean anything. It's more than likely that any other combination of 7 numbers you can think of has also never come up. Lottos make money because people fundamentally have no idea how to conceptualize large numbers. You will never win the jackpot. Don't break the bank trying to. Story 22. Less than 5% of seniors wind up in nursing homes and roughly 5% of seniors develop dementia. Personally, I think the dementia numbers are too low because I know more than a handful of elderly people with some form of it. Both my mother and MIL, 2 neighbors, husband and wife, plus another neighbor from a different neighborhood. That seems high. Story 23. Any sort of human attack by a black bear. People who haven't been around them will swear up and down that they are ferocious beasts. But black bears are really not trying to do all that LOL. They have kind of lazy, peaceful, and playful personalities that make them more like big puppies than apex predators, especially in areas where they are used to humans being around. Story 24, the colonization of space. I wish people would realize they bought shares, with their personal money, from the International Space Station. I will go ahead and say in advance that I'm aware it's extremely hard to grow a closed market. Either put a huge light on the moon that we can see here, or you're bluffing. We definitely have solar. Give the people what they want. Story 25. The chance that some random guy on YouTube is correct when he contradicts the scientific consensus is extremely small. In fact, the chance that a scientist is correct when going against the consensus is pretty small. There is a reason why everyone still brings up Galileo as an example. It's one of the very few examples where the consensus really did turn out to be wrong. Science is constantly changing, and yes, you're supposed to question everything. But in general, the corrections are minor course adjustments, not 180-degree changes. Story 26. This will be unpopular, but human settlements on Mars. No, not because of the technological challenges. Those can be overcome. Not even because of the pointlessness of settling in an inhospitable desert, aside from the technological advancements it'd boost. No, I just have the intuition it won't be allowed by the powers that direct the universe, because humanity is a failed, corrupted experiment that should not be allowed to spread. Story 27. I'm always a bit confused by people who live in hurricane and tornado zones saying they're scared of earthquakes more. Like, as a Californian, the actual risk of an earthquake hitting most areas of population is absolutely minuscule. The last large earthquake California had was in an unpopulated area and was a freak occurrence. Story 28. People often freak out about getting attacked by a shark, but the odds are insanely low. You have a better chance of getting struck by lightning or even winning the lottery. We tend to focus on rare, dramatic events because they're sensationalized in the media. In reality, your daily drive to work is far more dangerous. Story 29. Any kind of vaccine reaction other than possibly a bit of a sore arm for a day. For context, 3,000 deaths from aspirin per year, 0 deaths from the MMR vaccine. That said, the jury is still out on whether Bill Gates is injecting you with tracking microchips. Oh wait, jury just came back in. Turns out Bill just uses the cameras and mics and GPS tracker in your phone. Never mind. Story 30. Being harmed by eating food. Food by definition is anything that is edible by humans. People believe things like pork or gluten or corn are dangerous to humans when in reality, the dangers lay in high BMI, low fiber, low activity. Eat whatever TF you want, just don't be fat and give your bowels the correct proportions of fibers or other stuff. Story 31. Back in college, I took a theoretical physics course, and one of the problems was determining the probability that a basketball sitting on a chair could spontaneously fall through the chair, and then both objects would revert back to their normal states. It might seem impossible, but in actuality, it is only improbable. Like really, really improbable. I made the mistake of telling my wife about this years later, and she actually started to tear up with anxiety that the ground was going to open up any second and swallow her whole. She still thinks about it to this day. Story 32. Based on my experience and research, I find that losing your house to a fire is unlikely to happen. One of my college professors once said that the more likely a house is to be insured against something, the less likely that thing is going to happen to it. In particular, he said that houses are more likely to suffer flood damage than fire damage. Story 33. Electric vehicle, EV, catching fire. They are much less likely to catch fire than internal combustion engine, ICE, cars. And even then, most EV fires do not involve the battery, much less happen because of the battery. The most common cause of car fires is damage resulting from impact, that is, a crash. In ICE cars, what usually happens is a fuel line gets damaged and leaking fuel comes into contact with a hot part of the engine, our damaged wiring causing arcs in the presence of fuel vapors. EVs simply don't have this risk. Depending on where the wiring fault is, there are other materials that can catch fire, but here the risk is the same for both types. The second most common type of car fires is secondary. That is, the building is on fire, setting the car on fire. Or you're in a car crash and the other car spills its fuel and catches fire. The third most common cause of car fires is, wait for it, arson. To give you an idea, NSW, state in Australia where Sydney is, fire service responds to around 3,000 vehicle fires per year. By comparison, since the introduction of EVs in Australia in 2011, there have been exactly 6 EV fires in all of Australia. Of those 6, 1 was arson, 3 were secondary fires, 1 was a high-speed crash. None of these involved a battery fire, and none were charging at the time. Actually, there is a 7th, but it was very recently, and the details haven't been published yet. The 6th was caused by road debris. A drive shaft, I think, came off a truck. It's an 18 kilograms hunk of metal that went under the car and pierced the battery. The car alerted the driver that there was a fire risk. The driver had time to pull over, get out of the car, and remove their valuables. Something like 15 minutes before the pyrotechnics started, that specific car was torn down. Video is in YouTube to assess the damage. The battery was burned, but aside from the area where the cabin air passes through from the front, the interior was largely unmanaged, so much so that a plastic water bottle in the cup holder wasn't even warped. Yes, lithium-ion batteries burn pretty good. Thermal runaway is not fun, there's no question, but it is really very rare. And we're increasingly moving towards LFP batteries, which are much more resilient against thermal runaway. What is a problem is the battery packs in personal mobility devices, scooters, e-bikes, skateboards, etc. They are not subject to the very strict regulations that cars, on the one end, and mobile phones, laptops, on the other end, are. They're made to the lowest cost, often foregoing crucial bits like overvoltage protection, an off-the-shelf chip that costs less than 1C in bulk. It's a recipe for disaster. Fortunately, governments are starting to recognize this and formulating policy to address the issue. Story 34. Went to Rome recently. We notice a group in front of us at customs. The next day, walking around downtown, we bump into them. Then the day after that, we're an hour outside of Rome and sit down at a table. They're right next to us at another table. We get to talking and find out they're from not just the same U.S. city, but the same town in that city. Pretty crazy.